The following program is brought to you by TZ Productions, celebrating KPTS's nearly 50 years of community support in South Central Kansas. Great starts here on KPTS.
Support also comes from viewers like you. Thank you.
Sometimes you have to go through hell to find your way to heaven. Case in point, our guest on this week's edition of One on One. His name is Roosevelt DeShazer, Sr., but most people call him Buck. He spent most of his youth in Greenville, Mississippi. His father was an abusive alcoholic. His mother ran an illegal gambling joint, and by the time he was a teenager, Buck was essentially fending for himself, and in a very dark place. He started selling drugs at a very young age and found himself immersed in a life of hedonism and violence. There were prostitutes and gunfights. His life was a chaotic nightmare. Where would it lead? How would it end? Well, you are about to find out as we go one-on-one with Roosevelt Buck DeShazer right now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Victor Hogstrom, pleased to welcome a man who has walked the walk in both darkness and light. Now he's here to talk the talk. Pastor Roosevelt DeShazer, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Is it easier to prevent people from making bad choices or to rescue them once they've already made a mess of things?
You know, Victor, with the kind of people that I've dealt with in the past as far as gang members and those that are coming out of prison, I believe it's easier to walk with them after they've made the mistake. Because a lot of times, even with the young teenagers, they have to first realize they made a mistake because they believe that they can do or accomplish anything and they're above the law and they're above getting hurt. But once they've made the mistake and realize that they don't have all the answers, that's when it's easier to help them.
So you're saying commit the crime, pay a price, go to jail, and then you try to help them? Or what about preventing them from committing the crime?
You asked me which one was easier. Now,
you're right.
I do them both. I do them both. I mean, talk to them, but a lot of times, especially where they are in their walk or what they're doing, a lot of times they have to get caught before they realize that they're not invincible. But yes, I spend a lot of time talking to young people, trying to example to them what it's like once you've made that mistake so they don't make that mistake.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, you have an interesting life.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about the story of your life. How does it begin?
I'll tell you, Victor, I was born and raised in Greenville, Mississippi. My family, on my mom's side and dad's side, is very large. And spent more time with the family on my mom's side, and it was all encompassed with drugs and gambling. We had a number of nightclubs and other business ventures that we were legal and illegal. And so when I was in the 6th grade, that's when I actually started selling marijuana. I was selling $5 bags of marijuana for $2.50 in the 6th grade. And kind of advanced once I got caught in school with it, and my stepfather realized what I was doing and told me if I wanted to do that, I didn't have to steal from him, that he gave me my first batch, and that's when I started hanging up at the family business and got involved in it.
That was dangerous business.
It was, because all around, and we talk about in Greenville, Mississippi, our club was called Douglas Club on Clay Street. We had another club called Chocolate City and another one called Jimbo's Cafe. And Chocolate City and Douglas Club was the main two places where people came to get not only their party on, but all their party materials, as well as we held poker games, dice games, pool table, everything. We did it all.
So where were you in the mix?
I stayed at Douglas Club. Me and my mom ran Douglas Club, and what I did was on the pool hall side, if there was a dice game or a poker game, then I was the house. Or a lot of times I spent my time on the pool table. I could shoot pool pretty good. I learned to shoot pool when I was 6 years old down in Miami from one of my uncles down there. So I've been shooting pool for a while. And so they used to come from round to, again, everybody want to try to beat the house. And so that's what they was trying to do.
So would you consider yourself a childhood gangster?
To be honest, that's what we were, because we talking about back in the 70s. My stepfather was the biggest gangster around there. Everybody knew him. They came from Arkansas, Memphis, everywhere to try to beat him. When I was 13, 14 years old, he had that time a 75 red and white Coupe de Ville Cadillac, and I was able to drive it when I wanted to. I was transporting the marijuana to the guys that was dealing for us on my bicycle or on the car. So yes, it was, we were gangsters.
You've mentioned your stepfather several times now. Tell us about him.
He was a man that was, again, self-taught, but he was a hustler from the time he was a child, and he was no joke. I mean, he carried at any time, he probably had 6 or 7 guns on him. But not only guns, at any time he could probably have over $10,000 on him as well. And so everybody knew him. He was quick to fight. But again, he was, he was good-hearted as well, because the people in the neighborhood and in the town knew if they were short on their rent or lights, they came, and we did loans, and it was all a quarter on the dollar, but we did loans and things like that. So he had both the good and bad side. As long as you stayed on his good side, everything was all right.
So he was making a lot of money for the family.
He was making a lot of money. Matter of fact, he had 3 families. We was just one family, but he had 3 families. Matter of fact, I think he had over 20 kids, as a matter of fact. But again, back in the 70s, that was just, that was the way. I mean, he ran his business.
So tell us about your mom.
My mom was the oldest of 13 kids. She was the high school queen at her high school. My mom and my dad, my real dad, when they got married, found out that he was very abusive to her. And when I was 3 years old, she decided that she had enough. I had a little sister that was a year and a half old, and we left Mississippi and left him and went to Miami to try to get away from him. Ended up, my little sister died from pneumonia from the trip, from leaving Mississippi to Miami. She caught pneumonia and died. And my mom was a very strong woman, man. She met another man down there, and he ended up being the same way. And she said it was time to go again. And this time I had another sister, but she got away from me and we went back to Mississippi. But she's had some hard challenges in her life, but she's still my backbone. She's still my mother. And again, she's the one that I call on even right now.
She's still alive?
She's still alive. She's still dealing with some health issues. She has had lymphoma cancer. She's dealing with HIV and AIDS. And she is not ashamed to tell her story. She wasn't a prostitute or anything like that. She just made a bad decision. And but she's living with it. She's praising God every day for her life. Know that she could have been gone, because during the time we ran the club, there was a lot of gunfights and a lot of gunfire. Both of us could have been gone a long time ago.
Certainly. But you didn't. You're still alive.
Yes, sir.
How did you get so lucky?
I don't think I was lucky, Victor. I think, and back then, I would probably say that I was just that slick, that I was able to get away from the police and stuff. I got arrested one time when I was 17, and they raided our club to do that. And that's one thing I would never forget. Police officer came and put a nickel-plated double-barrel shotgun in my face and told me to reach for the ceiling. And I thought my arms was gonna come out of socket. And he found the marijuana on me and stuff, and I was 17 then. As a matter of fact, if they'd have waited 2 more months, I'd have been 18, and they could have charged me for as an adult. But no, I don't think I was lucky. I believe God allowed me to go through everything I went through so I can be around for such a season as this.
Was that the worst experience with the police that you had?
No, I've had a number of experiences as far as we used to transport pounds of marijuana and kilos of cocaine from Miami to Mississippi. And me and my cousin, it was an 18-hour drive, and we used to leave one place and drive straight and turn around and come back, get money, go back, get the other. And we got stopped one time, and I mean, the trunk was full. And he stopped us for speeding. And it was just so, you know, the way, and I was driving, the way I talked to him and stuff and gave him respect. He just told us to slow down and to go on, just to slow it down. But yeah, it could have been a whole lot different.
And at what age were you at the time?
I was about 16 at that
You
time.
were still young.
Still young. As a matter of fact, I've been in a couple of gunfights, and the one that really troubles me, if you will, is with my stepfather, because he was very demanding. He was in control, and he was the boss. And he had hit my mom. I was 17 now, and I had made in my mind no man was going to ever put his hands on my mom again. And so I came home, and they had been fighting. He had left, and he came back. And when he came back, I grabbed my .38 and I unloaded and reloaded and tried to kill him. And again, I say it's probably one of the worst moments of my life. I know I was defending my mother, but also that was my brother's father. And I look back now, I could have killed my brother's father, and I think I would have damaged the relationship I have with my only brother right now if I would have.
So, with this experience and this from your growing up days, you will agree that you probably should have been arrested and have a criminal record today.
Victor, I do have a criminal record. As a matter of fact, I've been on FBI's list of people to watch down in Mississippi. I was arrested in Tallahassee, Florida, with possession with the intent to sell cannabis. I had a store when I got out of the Navy.
And at what age was this?
This was 20.
20.
Well, I got out there about 2021. I got out of the Navy and I went to Tallahassee, and we had a store there. My uncle opened up a store there. And again, I went down to Miami. I got some cocaine and some weed, and I got back into the business. And they stopped me one night.
Did you say after you left the Navy?
After I left the Navy.
Okay, go ahead.
And so then I closed up the store one night, was on my way home, and the police stopped me right in front of the Capitol building there in Tallahassee, Florida. And so happened when they, my license was suspended. And so when they searched me, I had a pack of marijuana papers and a joint in my pocket, and they gave them probable cause to search the car, and they found some more marijuana in the car.
So, with all that have happened to you, they are not pleasant stories.
No, sir.
Why are you telling this story on television today?
One thing that I've always believed, and it's something that I've shared with a number of gang members, those that I've worked with, that my past does not dictate my future. I believe, again, God allowed me to experience everything that I experienced in my life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that I can talk to someone coming out of prison or a young man making a mistake in gang life. I can relate to them. Therefore, we can actually have a bond.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit, back into after the growing up days. You decided, you went to high school.
Yes, sir.
You graduated.
Yes, sir.
And you made a decision to go into the Navy.
And it was a decision that was, I think, necessary. I didn't graduate with my class. I had to go to summer school to get my diploma. But I joined the Navy right after I had that shootout with my stepfather. And I made a decision then that if I was to stay there in Greenville, keep doing what I was doing, because by now I wasn't working for him or with him, I was on my own. I was getting my own product from my family in Miami. And if I would have stayed there, then we would have constantly been at odds. And I've always liked the Navy. I've always liked the water growing up in Miami. So I went into a recruiter station, and that's when I joined the Navy to get away from it.
So what led you to do that?
Because, again, I knew if I was to stay where I was, and I mean, my grandparents and great-grandparents and a lot of uncles and aunts and stuff, that was praying for me and was hoping that I would make a change. I didn't want to disappoint them because I knew if I'd have stayed there, I would have either been going to jail or I'd have been dead.
Okay, so you went into the Navy, and after the Navy, what's next?
Well, after the Navy, like I say, and again, the Navy was great. I appreciated the Navy because I got off the corner and got a chance to go places that I would have never went before.
Okay, before you continue that, did the Navy find out about what you had been doing?
When I went to my recruiter, I told them that I had this case on me because I was 17 when they raided the club.
Right.
And they saw it and they put it in there as a condition, but I was able to get into the Navy with that charge because I was still a minor at that time.
Okay.
And so went into the Navy, but when I got out of the Navy, and the way I got out too was probably a little something that now I regret. I decided 6 months before my date to get out, I decided I wanted to get out because of the opportunity that was waiting for me in Tallahassee. So there was a UA test coming about, and I had the means to beat it, and I had beat it before, and I decided not to. And my commanding officer and XO and a lot of them, they pleaded with me to stay in and to do something better and take other things. And I told them I just wanted to get out. And so that's when I went to Tallahassee and opened up the store and just got back into the game, if you will.
And then you decided the game was not the game you wanted to play. You decided to get an education.
Well, that was, again...
During the Navy.
Well, after the Navy, I went to Tallahassee, and that's when the police arrested me. And so at that time, Boeing had opened up a plant down in my hometown. And my auntie was down there. She said, you know what, we can probably get you on with Boeing with your Navy experience. I worked on airplanes. I was an aircraft engine mechanic. Okay. And so that's how that started with Boeing. And
tell us about your career that you built.
You know, I stayed in aircraft, counting the Navy time, for about 28 years. And it was hard at first because I was used to making, you know, here it is now, I've been reduced to getting a paycheck for about $300 or $400 a week when I was used to making that in an hour or so.
Right.
And so I really had to adjust. But something hit me one day when I looked back over my mom's life, me and her was talking, and I decided, because my dad got killed when I was 10 years old in Kansas City, and both of my stepfathers was abusive. All three of my dad and my two stepfathers was abusive to my mom. So I decided that I wanted to be the kind of man that I wish my mother would have married, the kind of husband that I wish she'd have had, and the kind of father that I wish I'd have had. So that's when I changed my life.
And before you changed your life, did you realize then that you were doing bad things?
It was without a doubt. I mean, my plan at that time was to be the best hustler that I could be. I mean, they already came from everywhere to beat me. Here it is, a guy 12, 13, 14, 15, all through junior high and high school that wore diamond rings to school, gold teeth in his mouth. I wore suits to school. I had 17 inches of hair. I had a girlfriend at every high school in the town. I had girls on the street that was twice my age that I was dealing with. So again, I mean, to me, I was living a dream. You know, but again, it hit me, like I say, when I looked over my mother and I looked at my grandparents and great-grandparents and the life that they were living and what they were doing with the children, the amount of children they had and the money they were making, and they was a lot happier than I was because I was always looking over my shoulder.
So you worked for Boeing several years, and tell us, how did you continue turning your back on the bad things you were doing?
3 years probation I got on that case in Tallahassee, and Boeing I was already hired with Boeing, and then when I went back to Tallahassee and they charged me and they gave me the 3 years probation, got back, and they said, okay, look, you're good. I was a senior aircraft mechanic. They was calling on me. I worked on the president's plane for Boeing because one thing that my grandfather instilled in us was a work ethic to do the best you can do, the best job you can do every time you do it. And so that's what I did. So I became the best aircraft mechanic that I could be. And they called on me for a lot of the top jobs, the most important jobs, and I did them the best that I can do them. And so Boeing kept me on, even up here, still on probation, still had another year of probation. It brought me to Wichita. And
this was in 1989?
In 1989, yes, sir. They brought me to Wichita, and again, still with a year probation. Again, Bowen, Mississippi hired me with the probation, and then Bowen, Wichita said, you know what, again, your record speaks for yourself. So they gave me a job.
So describe the kind of man you were at that time when you were working for Boeing.
You know what, I was so appreciative, because now, you know, when I first started, it was like $200 or $300 a week. Now it's, you know, $500, $600, $700, you know, a week and more with Bowen. But also, now I'm married. I got 2 kids, and I went back to that thing that I told myself. I wanted my wife and my kids to not be ashamed of me, or not to have to bow their head or turn away from a conversation when somebody called my name. And so Bowen helped me, just like the military did, to discipline myself, to handle my money better, and to get used to living off of a paycheck instead of going out doing something else.
But after Boeing, you had another job with another company.
I had a company.
And you continued your career.
I continued a career with Aramark Instrument Labs for 13 years. And it probably was the last 2 years that I was with Aramark, because I joined a church called Tabernacle at that time, and I started preaching. I started preaching in 2000. And about 2007, 2008, I was constantly being called on to do funerals and do other things like that. And even at the company, the owner of the company, he would allow me to pray during Thanksgiving, to pray. People all around the company, all colors, all Asian, all of them would come to me and ask me to pray for them and different things. And again, it just stirred up something in me that I knew that I was getting ready for full-time ministry. And so in 2009, they came to me and said that they no longer needed my services. I hadn't done anything wrong. They was going in another direction, and they no longer needed my service. And I tell you, it hurt at first, because we had built a family there. I was there for 13 years, like I say, in 2 days. But when I walked out of there with my tools, and when I drove off of that parking lot, I felt a weight off of my shoulder. And it wasn't the next week, I started working with Youth for Christ and gang members. And then 2 months later, I started pastoring a church down in Independence, Kansas.
So what led you to this ministry? What happened in your life?
You know, Victor, sometimes I still ask myself that. I remember when I first got out of the Navy and I went back to Mississippi and went to church, and hadn't been in church in a long time. And I went to church, and the pastor at that time was the son of the pastor that baptized me when I was 10 years old. And he preached a sermon, and before he got through preaching the sermon, I was crying profusely and couldn't stop. My mother, my auntie, they all tried to comfort me, and I don't know what came over me. But then it turned when I went to Antioch Church, and my kids begged me to take them. And I tried to sit in the back row. And when the pastor said, "Do we have any visitors today?" And I wasn't going to say nothing. I was just going to sit back there and be quiet. And my oldest daughter said, "My daddy's here." And, you know, that just did something to me. And my life haven't been the same since. I got up, I took the pastor's hand, joined the church, became an usher. 2 years later, became a deacon. And 3 years after that, I started preaching.
So now that you are a pastor, preaching the Word of God.
Yes, sir.
What is your mission as a pastor? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish?
I'm hoping to really be as transparent as I can to let people know.
Well, you are being transparent, all right now.
That no matter what your life was like, no matter the mistakes you've made in life, no matter the mistakes you make right now today, you can always do better. You can turn to God, and God will never leave you or forsake you. And again, I believe God uses our experiences to help us in the present.
What is it that you would like to do in life that you have not done?
I've thought about writing a book, but I believe you've given me that opportunity to tell my story, so that might be off the table. But I just want to continue to help people to see how real God is, how good He is, and that His grace and His mercy is not only sufficient, but it is awesome.
Now, you have done prison ministry for a while.
Yes, sir.
Now, do you believe there is hope for everybody to change, or are some people simply lost causes?
You know what, Victor, I believe both of those because I have had some that I have poured my life into, given them chance. I have made quite a few connections around the city to help them get jobs and stuff, and some of them just don't take it, and they end up going back. And so what I've had to learn to do is not to find fault or guilt in myself because of what they did, but to continue to look for the next one. And so I just continue, man. I believe everybody can be helped if they want to be helped. The reason why I changed my life is because I wanted my life to be better and not like my stepfathers and my fathers were.
How do you enjoy spending your time today? What is that philosophy upon which you operate in view of what you have experienced in the past, and you've come a long way to today?
The thing that gives me the most pleasure is my wife and my children, and now my grandchildren. Because now I believe I've become that man, that husband, that father, and now grandfather that I wish my mother and I could have experienced with my father. And so I love spending time with them. They are the joy. They are the reason why I do what I do, whatever I do. So again, if they're faced with anybody that they ever come in contact with, even my grandchildren, they come in contact with anybody and they call my name, they can proudly say, yeah, that's my papa, that's my daddy. And they don't have to drop their head.
Do you have any regrets about your history?
You know, there's quite a few things I think, if I had control of, I probably would have done different. But then as I look back and I think about it, again, I believe everything that God allowed me to go through, every gunfight, every knife fight, every drug deal, every bit of fornication, everything that I've ever done in my life, I believe God allowed it to happen so that when I counsel somebody or when I stand behind this pulpit, I don't have to hide my face. I don't have to be ashamed. I know what God can do.
You are currently the pastor of the Progressive Missionary Baptist Church of Wichita.
Sir. Yes, sir.
And president of the Greater Wichita Ministerial League.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
You've come a long way, baby.
God bless you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And thanks for being on the program.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. All right.
And thank you for watching. If you have a question or comment, our email address is oneonone@kpts.org. I'm Victor Hogstrom. I hope you have enjoyed the program and hope to see you back next time.
The preceding program was brought to you by TZ Productions, supporting KPTS and the communities it serves in South Central Kansas. Great starts here on KPTS.
Support also comes from viewers like you. Thank you. Call KPTS to receive a DVD copy of this program for a $40 donation. You can also send a check or money order along with the program name, date, and time to the address on your screen. And you will receive a 1-year KPTS membership.